That's a clown question, bro.
Hi, what's up on you?
So I'm gonna kick some dirt.
He gets on base.
Just a bit outside.
I'm not the type of player that's going to be Johnny Hustle.
If you don't want me to watch the ball, you can go get it out of the ocean.
And welcome to the show to be named later. Where we're talking baseball, kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, we are just 145 days shy of that April 1st opening day. We are so close. You can almost just feel it. And we got a lot to talk about today. We got awards coming up. This awards is probably the biggest voting process that this country has seen in the last week.
Very much so.
It's not even close.
Yeah. Big time. I would agree. I would have to agree. It's the thing I've definitely researched the most, probably out of everything that's happened this month. But yeah, it's award season. It's one of our favorite seasons, kind of on the low key. It's 1 week, but it's where, we eventually want to be in a spot where maybe we're voting for these awards or something of that nature. That would be unbelievable. But, we love to evaluate, see what our opinions are, see if the writers are kind of getting it right, see if we're thinking like the writers are. And yeah, it's a fun time. But first we have some news. I don't know what happened chronologically. I think, was it Steve Cohen first?
I think Steve Cohen was first. Alex Cora was Friday. Steve Cohen was, I think, also Friday, maybe Thursday. And then what was the other thing? Robbie Ray went to the Blue Jays. That was yesterday. Let's talk about Steve Cohen because I think that happened first. And it's probably the most important of these storylines because it is the end of an era in Queens. Not an era, an error, as in like an E5 or an E6, but it's an EO in ownership for the New York Mets. And it has come to a merciful end. The Wilpons are no longer the owners of the New York Mets. They bought the team after their World Championship in 1986, and they got back there a couple times, but were never ultimately able to finish it out. And there was just a huge narrative running through New York. They weren't willing to spend money. They weren't opening up the checkbooks to anybody. And I mean, people have been calling for this for so long, ever since I can remember. The first time I was a baseball fan in like 2010, 2011, I'm from New York, so I heard plenty of Mets fans talking about the Wilpons. There were radio hosts here calling them the coupons because they were so cheap. And it's over. We don't have to think about this anymore. And Steve Cohen, who is worth $14 billion, is the new owner of the New York Mets franchise.
Yeah. And it's huge. They're a big market team. And, they were spending sort of like a mid-level team for a while there. Yeah. I mean, you have to give some credit where credit's due. I mean, they had like deals with like Carlos Beltran. They were able to extend Yoenis Cespedes, but they weren't spending like how they should have been spending, which is probably like the Yankees, Dodgers, and Red Sox. But they were more mid-level. And Steve Cohen's probably going to change that, and maybe. Yeah. I mean, literally once I found out that the Wilpons bought after 1986, I'm like, this might be a curse. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm going to make a bold prediction here, Chris. The odds that the Mets get one of JT Realmuto or George Springer in this offseason, one of them, I'm going to put it at 100%. I'm going to lock that in. They're going to get one of those two. I don't know which one. My gut would say Springer, but I think they get one of those two.
Yeah, I mean, either one would make sense. They were going after JT Realmuto in trade talks a couple of years ago when he was on the market. He ultimately went to the Phillies. But yeah, now they have an opportunity to nab him. He's probably the best catcher in baseball right now. Wilson Ramos.
He's the safest bet you have. When we talked about the great catchers last offseason, the three really good offensive catchers were him, Yasmani Grandal, and Mitch Garver. And 2 of those 3 had down years offensively, and you can guess which one of them didn't. And is also a premier defensive catcher as well.
Yeah, and Wilson Ramos hasn't worked
Gary
out as
Sanchez has struggled offensively and strikes out a lot.
yeah. So the other catchers have not worked out
Lived up to that
great.
expectations.
Yeah,
Hmm
have not met expectations, and yeah, Springer. I mean, yeah, you could like if you sign him, you can kind of put him wherever really in the outfield. Like who do they have in the outfield? They got
They have
Nimmo.
So they got Nimmo, they got Conforto, they got McNeil, they had Cespedes, but that didn't really work out. I think primarily those 3, but I mean, obviously you can plug George Springer in. You could put McNeil wherever. So I don't think Springer would create sort of a logjam there.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's not really a positional issue.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't get real Muto for sure, then you go Springer there for sure.
You have JD Davis as well.
Yep, JD Davis.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it would be a good PR move for Cohen to just go and splash first off season.
Yeah, that's a great way to build a narrative
Yeah.
when you've had this negative one and the way you spend your money for years. Although the theory that a lot of people have is that they're going to start they might flirt a little bit with DJ LeMahieu just to drive his price up because, I mean, if you're the Yankees, you cannot under any circumstances lose him. It doesn't matter where he goes. If he's anywhere else but in the Bronx, that is a big problem for your friend. And if he's in Queens, that's going to set the tone for Cohen, and it's going to shake Yankee fans a little bit, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. It would be because he's an MVP finalist. He was the heartbeat of the Yankees offense. Yeah, the Yankees fans would be very mad about that, and Mets fans, I imagine, would be very happy about that. Having an MVP finalist from the Yankees on your team. But yeah, if he could just jack his price up a little bit, I guess that would that would be a good PR move as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to unpack with Cohen. Have you seen his Twitter page, by the way?
I haven't gone fully into it.
He is very active on Twitter for someone who is the owner of a professional sports franchise, and he interacts with fans all the time. He answers all the questions, and I love it. And I mean, it's obviously a great way to build a connection right away and to earn the trust of your fans, because that's what's most important, really, as far as who you want to root for you. And he started by cutting house entirely. Brody Van Wagenen, gone. Omar Minaya, gone. The entirety of the front office, just gone. But he brought back Sandy Alderson, which I think is a good move, because I do think Sandy Alderson is a guy who is willing to spend the money, but he was kind of just underneath the Wilpons' wing, so to speak, in his last tenure. And obviously, there were a lot of other reasons why I think Sandy Alderson didn't continue with the Mets. He was diagnosed with cancer for a little bit, so that probably took a lot out of what he was able to do. And thankfully, he is doing well now, which we'd love to see. And I'm really glad that Sandy Alderson is getting another chance in New York.
Yeah. It did seem like he was kind of on a leash with the Mets.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll see what he and Cohen can do. Just unleashed, pretty much, literally unleashed. See what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's pretty exciting. We're Red Sox fans, and we kind of like Mets fans and kind of what the Mets bring, because they're the other New York team. They're kind of the underdogs, so it's kind of good to see.
Do you think that this makes the Mets legitimate playoff contenders from the start? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of questions that have to be answered this offseason, but right now, I mean, I obviously feel much more confident about them than I did with the Wilpons, but we've all known this is a team that is good on paper.
Oh yeah, and they're always like a non-injured player away from maybe making a run, or a couple injuries away from making a run, and you add another play, you add financial flexibility to that. That could be a thing, and also the National League East is very unpredictable. I mean, we had the Marlins finishing in second this year, So I think
Yeah.
really anything can happen. The Braves are probably going to be at the top, and then from number 2 down, really it's anybody's game. It seems like at least
That
this that
division,
was the case.
yeah, that division as a whole is very interesting because the Braves are the Braves. The Marlins broke out this year. The Mets have a new owner. The Phillies have been, right up there for a while. They just haven't really been able to finish the job and get to the playoffs. And then I think the Nationals, strangely enough, for the for a team that very recently won a World Series, it might be in the worst position in the division.
Yeah, possibly. Kind of an older team,
That
and
might be one of the hardest divisions to predict next year.
yeah, for sure. And I feel like it's sort of been that way for a couple years. With the Phillies kind of rejuvenating, the Mets always having a good team on paper, but never really pulling it together. And the Nationals, are they going to be good? Are they going to be bad? You never really know.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's always interesting in the National League East, and Steve Cohen buying the Mets definitely makes it more interesting. Uh, probably the most interesting division out there, especially when the Marlins are in the playoffs, just out of
That
nowhere.
that throws a wrench into everything, really,
Yeah,
because they now have, like, they were just like oh yeah, like the Marlins are gonna be there. They're the bottom feeders. They're in the basement. But now you have to consider them because they forced it.
yeah, and it's probably not
Even
that.
if and even if they go back to a 70-win team next year in a full slate of games, that doesn't mean we can't not talk about them at the beginning of the season. Like, they have forced that on us.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you have like talent is just kind of appeared from last year with like Sanchez and Lopez and a couple other guys, Miguel Rojas. You have new blood out there in Miami, so it helps out. And yeah, interesting division. Steve Cohen makes it even more interesting. Anything more on this ordeal?
I'm excited to see what happens now because the Mets are an entirely different identity in everyone's eyes, and we're going to get to see it on the field next year. And if there's a time for them to break through, it's now.
Yeah, I think they're kind of like as an off-season commodity, they're kind of just a, a bulldozer now. They're
Hmm.
not really anything's getting in the way of them now, which is good to see. Always good to see another player in the free agency sweepstakes. Always makes it interesting. And another off-season deal happening on the East Coast with another big market team. The Red Sox
Hmm.
have their man back. Alex Cora has returned to manage the Boston Red Sox. How about that?
He sure has. And I think we alluded to this on an earlier show. This was going to happen. I mean, are we really surprised? Like, when I got this news on Friday morning, I wasn't. I was obviously anticipating it, but when it happened, I was just like, "Yep, that's it. That sounds about right." Like, it wasn't. I mean, obviously, I was excited, but it really didn't come out as much as I had anticipated, just because it was so expected. And you know, they went out, they did the interviewing process. They didn't half-ass it and just decide on Cora after like 2 seconds. Like, they actually, they interviewed guys like Sam Folds, guys like Don Kelly, Will Venable. They put other names out there. As soon as I got the reports that they were flying to Puerto Rico to meet with Cora, that kind of did it for me. Like, if you're coming to them, that says it all.
Yeah, and the interviews did seem to be real because it
Yes.
was the same archetype of managers, the young, early
Hmm.
40s type of guy who's probably going to go more into analytics and, you know, what Alex Cora was doing, scheduled off days, things of that nature with, Sam Fold, Will Venable, Don Kelly, and the rest of them. But yeah, I mean, I think after the interviews, they figured, you know, I, Alex Cora, he's worked already, and you, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. He helped lead you to a 108 win season and a World Series, and as a Red Sox fan, happy to have him back for sure.
So there's going to be a lot of questions question marks next year because, of course, he was tied into the Astros cheating scandal. He was the bench coach in 2017. He enabled for that behavior, and he was thrown under the bus by Jeff Luna. Whether that was legit or not, it happened. And the Red Sox have addressed it. They addressed it in the interviews. Cora seemed very apologetic with it. So I think he is ready to move on. And I think the Red Sox are ready to move on too. And especially since AJ Hinch also was able to find a job, there's no reason why Cora shouldn't. And obviously he wanted to be in Boston. The players wanted him. The fans wanted him. The front office wanted him. Chaim Bloom, a guy who could have went out and hired his own guy, decided to bring back Cora anyway. So it's clear that this was the intention from sort of the very beginning, maybe even in January when they fired him.
Yeah, it seemed that way. And especially, I think what helped was that Wall Street Journal article that we've referenced a bunch. It basically kind of debunked the MLB report, and it basically was saying Astros kind of just scapegoated Alex Cora. It was really from upper management. An employee made a presentation to the general manager, Jeff Lunau, before Alex Cora even got hired. So that I believe that it's a more believable process from my point of view. It makes a lot more sense. And, with that, I think it makes it a little less controversial, especially for me. And I think it makes a lot more sense. And yeah, Alex Cora, it's going to be fun. And I think the 2021 Red Sox, I think they'll be, I don't know if they'll be exactly playoff favorites, especially in a 10-team format, but they look a lot better with Cora and with some added pitching help that we didn't really know was available for next year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there are certainly still question marks on the table within the rotation, but you have Chris Sale. Let's say Chris Sale comes back in like May or June. That's probably the best case scenario. I'd say worst case scenario would be like August, September, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have Chris Sale for some amount of time in the 2021 season, more than likely. You're going to have Eduardo Rodriguez back. That's a guy who won 19 games in 2019. And I know that pitcher wins are, we're skeptical about it, which is fair. But 19 wins doesn't happen on accident.
And
so,
he finished sixth in the Cy Young. I think he finished sixth in ERA too, in like Baseball Reference War and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. That was kind of just the stat I had off the top of my head.
Yep.
But you had that. Nathan Eovaldi looked all right this year, and Tanner Houck was a guy who came up from the minors, who looked rather intriguing in his first few starts. And then my prediction, one of my free agent predictions, is that they're going to bring back John Lester to like a 1-2 year deal. So that would make a 5-man rotation, pending any depth moves. I don't really know who else they'd have, but let's hypothetically, if you go into that season with that rotation, obviously they're going to need someone to replace Sale for the first couple months. But this is a team that can be taken more seriously now that Cora is up there, because the players are now playing for someone who they want to play for. And believe it or not, that does make a very noticeable difference. And I mean, yeah, do you have anything else to add?
One other guy I'd add into the mix is I think they're experimenting a little bit with Nick Pivetta too. So
right.
he could be that kind of that fifth guy. And yeah, I think now last year you could kind of tell they weren't as in it as they were with Cora. It seemed kind of like a hopeless season. They ended up going 24-36.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
And even then, they won a lot of games at the end too, so it really should have been a lot worse.
Yeah, I think I would project them.
They were worse than the record suggests.
Yeah, I would project them from Cristiante's projections. I'd project them to be around 500, slightly above 500. If I had to guess now from where we are, I think they're maybe like an 83 to 85 win team right now, which is not a bad sign.
So they're going to replicate 2019 is what you're saying.
Yeah, except it won't be as disappointing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's still questions within the depth. But they also said that they're going to be big spenders in the offseason. So I don't know. I mean, Are they going to get a guy like Marcelo Zuna? Are they going to get a Michael Brantley? Are they going to go out and find, a big free agent name out there? Because in reality, I think a theme among a lot of free agency predictions is that there's not going to be a lot of multi-year deals or big deals that are given out. Like, I think MLB trade rumors had Michael Brantley getting like 2 years and like 15 million or something like that. Let me find that.
Yeah, it's very, very hard to
And
predict.
the Red Sox, obviously they do have some sort of stigma because of the Mookie Betts trade of not being big spenders, because they let go of him because of financial flexibility. But they've
During
obviously been willing to spend the money. There's countless examples of that.
Yeah, during that
so, yeah.
entire
I think that they really
Fenway
did.
Sports Group ownership, up until the Mookie Betts trade, they were giant spenders.
Yes, they were the big. Yeah, okay. I was wrong in the money, but MLB trade rumors has Michael Brantley going to the Braves on a 2-year, $28 million contract.
28 million.
Like that's 14 mil per year. So
I don't think it's that aggressive. I mean, he got 2 years, 32 million, and he's 2 years.
But that was after injuries. Like, he didn't really get hurt all that much in Houston.
That is true. But how old is he? Is he what, 32, 33?
34 in May.
Okay, he turns 34 in May. I don't know. I mean, we know from the free agent market, it's no country for old men. And I mean, I know it's not that old, but it's.
I think Michael Brantley does have a play style like someone who can have longevity, though.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's not.
Like, he's a very consistent, like, pretty good hitter, along with quality defense. Like, it's not like he's gonna be like this giant peak type of guy with a steep, downhill spiral from there. Like, I think, like, would we really be surprised if Michael Brantley was 38, hitting like 270 with like an 809 OPS?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be that surprising, but yeah, I mean, I could see a 2, maybe 3-year deal from him if it were a different market, like 3 or 4-year deal. But it's very, very hard to project for sure.
I think there's a lot of questions that are going to be answered, I'd say it's weird because I think free agency is going to move very slowly this year because of the decreased market due to the losses that everyone had with COVID this year. And the winter meetings, like the in-person event is canceled. Like, I'm sure, I mean, I don't know how the winter meetings are going to happen. I don't know if there's going to be a big spike in, activity transactions that happen then, but I mean, I'm sure the public isn't going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess luckily for us, I mean, not a lot has been happening at winter meetings lately because, it's easier to communicate with people. It's not like the year 2000 where you could just text somebody offers and have, a list of agents you're talking to. Now you have that available. That's why you can do these kind of virtual things. So, luckily there are those avenues.
Yeah. And I mean, Garrett Cole went in the winter meetings last year. So did Anthony Rendon. So I think, there was a lot of free agents or winter meetings activity last year. There's a lot of questions that are still to be answered about the dynamics of this offseason. But anyway, Alex Cora, right? He's coming back to Boston. And Red Sox fans should rejoice because this is a guy that everyone wanted, and it's clear that the team is better with him.
Yeah. I mean, all in all, he's just a good manager, and he's probably a top 5 manager in baseball. So, all in all, everyone in Red Sox Nation should be happy about that. And I guess the last thing we'll get into from the American League East, a bit of a minor deal, but it kind of kicked off free agency, a little 1-year, $8 million deal for Robbie Ray. But what I will say is maybe this is a positive for the players because Robbie Ray came off a pretty bad year and he was still able to get $8 million even with this whole revenue thing happening, revenue loss. And the Blue Jays are dropping $8 million on him. So maybe a good sign for the players.
Yeah, I mean, this could, yeah, I mean, $8 million. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a ton, but I think this deal could have a lot of upside for Toronto, um, in the best case scenario. I mean, I think worst case, $8 million isn't the end of the world, but it's also not bad for a guy like Robbie Ray, who's struggled a lot since his peak years of 2017, 2018. He's never really been the same since then, but I think that potential can still be there. And, this is a lefty heavy rotation, being that Junjin Ryu is the number one pitcher in this rotation, being a lefty. But I mean, I think the Ray deal is decent. Like, I don't see why you shouldn't have brought him back. I know he did have a 4.79 ERA with an even worse FIP in the brief time he spent with Toronto last year. But this is a team that needs rotation depth while Nate Pearson begins to develop. So, I mean, why not?
Yeah, why not? It's a good deal for both sides. I mean, you have the Blue Jays; they really lack rotation depth, and Robbie Ray is a guy with an arm who can throw baseballs, so that's always a plus. And also, Robbie Ray, he's heading into his age 29 season. He basically gets to redo his contract year and maybe change some people's minds. Maybe eventually get that multi-year, create 15
And also,
million plus average annual value.
Robbie Ray goes very under the radar as far as guys who can produce strikeouts. In 2017, he led the National League in strikeouts per nine with 12.1, and he has had no less than 11.8 every year since then.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with control. Walks were a big issue this year. If he can tone that down, I don't think a lot of people are hitting his stuff like crazy necessarily. So it's really about control, obviously what it's all about, controlling and commanding the baseball, and using the zone to your advantage. All the cliches for pitching. That's all Robbie Ray really has to do.
Yeah.
It's harder.
It is cliche. And I know that, doing that doesn't always immediately point to run prevention, because obviously he has struggled with that. But for whatever it's worth, it's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah, it's just it's the basics, and he's already somewhere if he's striking out 12 guys per nine.
So I wanna get into this here. Since 2017, the among pitchers with 500 innings pitched, of which there are 39. The strikeouts per nine rankings are as follows. Number 1, Chris Sale with 13.21. Number 2 is Max Scherzer with 12.3. Number 3 is Robbie Ray. He's right there at number 3 behind Chris Sale and Max Scherzer with 12.7, just ahead of Garrett Cole, Justin Verlander, Jacob deGrom, Trevor Bauer, Charlie Morton, Steven Strasburg, and Carlos Carrasco, rounding out the top 10. So this is one of the premier strikeout artists in the game. So, I mean, and out of this list, I'm looking at it here, all these guys since 2017 have very low ERAs with the exception of Robbie Ray. But this is an indicator that he really could turn it on if he's able to figure some of his things out. He needs to make an adjustment, whatever that may be. But the potential is definitely there for this to have high upside for Toronto.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like I said, good deal for both sides, especially the Blue Jays aren't really a team. They're a team that can contend now. So having a guy on a 1-year deal doesn't seem like a waste of time.
No.
But anyway.
So I'm looking at this chart here on Fangraphs. Out of these 39 pitchers, the top 30 has only one pitcher with at least 4 walks per nine, and it's Robbie Ray with 4.75. So
yeah.
So that's obviously the adjustment you need to make is command the zone. And in fact, he has the worst walk rate among the 39 pitchers. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, that is that's the deal breaker.
Figure that out.
Yeah. But anyway,
I wonder if Ryu's walk stats went down at all this year in his first year with Toronto. Just to see if maybe there is a translation.
No, it doubled because he was at 1.0 and then it went up to 2.2.
Yeah, it sure did. It went from 1.18 to 2.28.
Yeah, but like also, if
Well,
you're walking 2.3 batters per nine, it's not really a big deal.
no, it's still not. But 4.75 can happen.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, technically, Robbie Ray's walk rate did go down when he went to Toronto last year. It's a small sample size, but and it was still like almost 7. But hey, maybe a good sign there for Robbie Ray and the Blue Jays. I don't know.
If Robbie Ray can cut down the walks, he could be a legitimate star for Toronto to
Absolutely.
go behind a potential Pearson development and Hyunjin Ryu. That makes a strong three-headed rotation.
Yeah, I mean, this was a guy the Diamondbacks weren't going to give him up unless they got like the Yankees' entire farm system.
Yeah, they were like, we want Clint Frazier, Miguel Andujar, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, but you guys still pay, and we'll give you guys Robbie Ray.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, they were like, we will take all of Monument Park.
We will
stock in the New York Yankees for Robbie Ray. For this
we
lefty,
will build a Luis Gonzalez statue outside of Yankee Stadium, and we will pay for that statue.
Yeah,
and we'll give you guys Robbie Ray.
We'll give you this lefty with a 3.75 ERA.
But very good strikeout numbers. Don't look at the walks; they don't matter.
Yeah,
that's only the guy getting the first.
You like punch outs? You like Robbie Ray. Here we go.
That's right.
But anyway, on to sort of the main topic of the show.
Mm-hmm.
We alluded to this earlier. It's award season. Monday, November 9th, they are announcing the AL and NL Rookies of the Year. Tuesday, November 10th, they are announcing the Managers of the Year from the AL and NL. Wednesday, November 11th, they are announcing the AL and NL Cy Youngs. And then lastly, Thursday, November 12th, they are announcing the MVPs. And we're going award by award. This is being recorded on Sunday night. So this year it all aligned. I did picks and then I did predictions, but all my picks aligned with my predictions. So
okay, not all mine do.
Yeah, because there were some where I was thinking there might be some what would be the word? Opposite of correlation, but I don't know. I'm not an English major. But anyway, we're going to start with I guess the American League Rookie of the Year. You always start with the American League. I don't know, because it's alphabetical.
Alphabetical. Yep.
Yeah. So I'll go over the 3 candidates. So the first candidate I will mention is Kyle Lewis. Kyle Lewis has kind of been like the favorite for Rookie of the Year during the season. He leads all AL rookies in FWAR, offensive wins above replacement, and offensive runs above average. This year he hit 262 with an 801 OPS in 242 plate appearances. And then the next candidate I will talk about is Luis Robert, center fielder for the White Sox. He led all American League rookies in baseball reference WAR. Lewis led in FWAR, but he led in baseball reference WAR. And he also led in defensive wins above replacement and stolen bases.
Lewis versus Luis.
Yeah. And Luis led among all AL rookies in stolen bases as well. He ended up hitting 233 with a 738 OPS and 227 plate appearances. And he was tied.
Luis Robert was also a StatCast machine on both sides. 7 outs above average, and just great offensive exit velocity and stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. I was about to mention he was tied for second among all fielders in outs above average, and he actually has won some hardware already. He won a Gold Glove as a rookie, which is good to see. And then the last candidate is Christian Javier. He is tied for the lead for all American League rookie pitchers in baseball reference WAR. He had a 3.48 ERA and 54 1/3 innings. And some stat heads might look at his 4.94 FIP. don't let that FIP fool you, because his expected ERA was actually 2.94, and his hard hit percentage and xWOBA against were both in the 90th percentile. So I don't think the FIP really means anything there, especially when you have the savant stats behind it. So how are you looking at this Rookie of the Year race, Daniel Curran?
So when I'm evaluating a pitcher versus a hitter, in the case of Christian Javier here, I think obviously the average baseball fan would sway towards the hitter because they obviously get to perform on a more frequent basis. They get to make highlights. They get more opportunities for it. I just don't think Javier was dominant enough to really get that consideration, especially considering what the other two did. So I think Javier finishes third in this race. And I was very excited to see the close race to the finish between Kyle Lewis and Luis Robert. But Luis Robert went through a big slump in the month of September. With that being said, Kyle Lewis is my Rookie of the Year. I told people to watch out for him in the preseason. I remember one of the questions you asked me was who leads the Mariners in home runs, and I said Kyle Lewis. And he ended up hitting 11 this year after hitting 6 in 18 games in 2019. And he produced 1.7 Fangraphs WAR, had 126 weighted runs created plus, and is kind of the face of the rebuild in Seattle right now. So I am going to go with Kyle Lewis as my American League Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, that's a good pick. Also, I forgot to mention, there's some honorable mentions I think I should talk about, because there were some decent ones that weren't finalists. Sean Murphy of the Oakland Athletics, he had a 131 OPS plus in 43 games. He was a rookie. He's a catcher for the Athletics. And then Justice Sheffield actually had a 3.58 ERA and a 3.17 FIP in 55 and a third innings for the Mariners, teammates with Kyle Lewis. And I actually wrote down some notes. I put it under a segment, Kyle Lewis versus Luis Robert, because I actually think this might be a little closer than some people think, at least statistically. Optics, I'm not really sure. There's no significant difference in playing time between the two. Lewis's weighted runs created plus and OPS plus were both 25% higher than Robert's. Lewis had a 126 and Robert had a 101. Robert had 4 more stolen bases than Lewis. Robert had 9. Lewis had 5, but their base running runs, which is a stat that evaluates base running on Fangraphs, that was identical. So according to Fangraphs, they were pretty much identical base runners. Luis Robert hit 241 with runners in scoring position, and Kyle Lewis hit 192 with runners in scoring position. So both kind of struggled with the men in scoring position. Robert was a Gold Glove defender. He had 7 outs above average, and Lewis was a relatively average defensive player. He had 1 out above average, and both kind of similarly had, struggled down the stretch. They weren't really sprinting through the finish line with their seasons. Lewis in his last 29 games, which was basically half the season, had a 545 OPS, and Robert in his last 23 games had a 409 OPS, which was the downfall that Daniel was talking about. Kyle Lewis ended up having the advantage in win probability added, which is kind of a clutch statistic. He had 0.3 win probability added. Robert had negative 0.5. And Lewis had the advantage in F WAR by 0.2. Robert had the advantage in B WAR by 0.2. So in conclusion, how I look at it, Kyle Lewis's offensive advantage is enough for him to win Rookie of the Year. Lewis was not a defensive liability and was not on the same level. He was not a defensive liability, and he was on the same level on the bases as Robert. So his advantage in offensive production is enough to give him the award. And I believe Kyle Lewis should win the American League Rookie of the Year, and I believe he will win the American League Rookie of the Year.
I agree.
So on to after that, I found that interesting because Luis Robert did have spectacular defensive statistics, and he wasn't crazy far off offensively. But
it's crazy because he's one of those guys that can just hit balls like 490 feet, and kind of the stigma around them is that they're they're usually like first baseman or like DHs. They're not usually, or maybe third baseman. They're not usually outfielders who can move around in the outfield, and that's what Luis Robert is.
Yeah, he's definitely an exciting player of the future.
Hmm.
That's what these Rookie of the Year votings are it's kind of a celebration of what the future might bring. And those two,
Sometimes it's Michael Fulmer.
yeah, sometimes it's Michael Fulmer, or I don't know who's another flop.
That's
I don't
the
even
one.
know. But now on to the National League Rookie of the Year. We got Jake Cronenworth, who is a second baseman for the Padres, Devin Williams, who was a reliever for the Brewers, and Alec Boehm, who is a third baseman for the Phillies. Do you want to kind of go into your analysis of what you're thinking about with this Rookie of the Year vote?
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier with the whole pitching versus hitting thing, I do think that hitting gets more attention. So that being said, I think that Jake Cronenworth is going to be the winner. He was one of my first how about that's of the season after like 9 games or something like that. So obviously I was very excited about him from the beginning, and he just never really slowed down. Alec Baum came up around mid-season ish and went very under the radar. So I will tip my cap to him. However, I think the winner of this award should be Devin Williams. He was absolutely absurd this year. 1 earned run over 27 innings pitched, 17.67 strikeouts per 9. That's absurd as it is. But also, he had a 61% ground ball rate. So this guy gave up virtually 0 fly balls. The only run he gave up was a home run to Colin Moran in his second outing of the year. And in the months of August and September, he literally had a 0 ERA, which is absurd. His changeup was one of the most unhittable pitches in baseball this year. Um, I think Colton Wong was the only person to get hit off of it, if I'm not mistaken. So that was absolutely ridiculous. This guy came out of literally nowhere and had, granted, 60-game season, probably the most dominant reliever season possibly that I've ever seen. I mean, literally 1 earned run. That, let's say that equates to like 3 earned runs over a 162 game sample. That's still absolutely ridiculous. And with those strikeout numbers and ground ball numbers, I'm going with Devin Williams as my NL Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I'm kind of looking at this where kind of all three candidates intrigue me in their own ways. Jake Cronenworth is kind of the guy that was always there. If this is a most valuable rookie, if this is a most valuable rookie argument, in terms of value,
Yeah, that changes it up.
that might change it up with Cronenworth. He had 192 plate appearances. He hit 285 with an 831 OPS. He was second in B WAR and F WAR among NL rookies behind Key Brian Hayes, who went off for 24 games, but it was 24 games, so he doesn't get to be a finalist. And I think he still has his rookie status for next year. So,
Yeah.
Key Brian Hayes.
Randy Arozarena still has his rookie status intact.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah, that is true.
That's pretty crazy.
So he's going to be a very popular pick. And another guy who still has his rookie status intact, pretty good pitcher, had a 1.95 ERA this year, 11.4 strikeouts per 9. Does need to work on the walks a little bit. He had a 246 ERA plus. You already know who I'm talking about, Chris, so you could just say it.
Ian Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
He still has his rookie status next year.
That is true. But
Yeah.
back to Jake Cronenworth. He was third in offensive runs above average and defensive runs above average among National League rookies, and he was second in offensive wins above replacement. He hit 289 with runners in scoring position, very respectable, and he had 3 outs above average. So he was like kind of the consistent good rookie, had a very good rookie campaign. Then, of course, Devin Williams, National League Reliever of the Year. That's really most of what you have to say. Also, one earned run allowed in 27 innings, 53 strikeouts, 0.86 FIP. That's all I have for Devin Williams. And then Alec Boehm, he actually kind of has an underrated rookie campaign. He had 338 with an 881 OPS and 180 plate appearances. Almost had as many plate appearances as Jake Cronenworth. Cronenworth had more games because he was a pinch hitter in some of those games. Alec Boehm, also fascinatingly enough, he hit 452 with runners in scoring position this year. I found that pretty surprising. And he had 1 out above average out in the defense. And, Baseball Reference and Fangraphs defensive metrics are not as nice to him as Baseball Savant. So I think he should be getting a little more consideration than like Baseball Reference or Fangraphs would give him. But ultimately, I am going with Devin Williams as my Rookie of the Year because he was the best at what he did in all of Major League Baseball. And Cronenworth's and Boehm's numbers do not outweigh that enough, even though they were everyday players. So I think Devin Williams, because of the excellence of this season, it's no doubt for me that he should win the National League Rookie of the Year, and I believe he will win the National League Rookie of the Year. So on to American League Manager of the Year, which will be announced on Tuesday.
By the way, I have a question. What happens if someone like absolutely destroys the league but still doesn't obtain their rookie status? So they just win Rookie of the Year twice. Think about that for a second. Like, what if Alec Baum had like one less than the minimum amount of plate appearances to have rookie qualifications, but he just does well enough to like get Rookie of the Year, and then he just is still intact next year? Is that allowed? Do you have to have rookie status to be eligible?
It's only a problem that we would see this year.
Yeah, it is. Because like, what if Ian Anderson gets Rookie of the Year votes? What if Randy Arozarena gets Rookie of the Year votes?
I mean, I feel like that should be allowed. Like if you just
if you have a 5,000 OPS through 30 plate appearances, why shouldn't you get Rookie of the Year votes, even if you can get them again next year?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I agree with that state of mind because Ke'Bryan Hayes is kind of that guy.
Yes, like what if, like Ke'Bryan Hayes would be like the prime example. I mean, obviously, I don't think he would have won it regardless, but that's a possibility.
Yeah.
If someone does insanely well enough.
Yeah, and for those unaware, Ke'Bryan Hayes, I believe, had an 1124 OPS in 24 games.
For the Pirates. Yeah, he was reportedly the third person to go over in the Archer deal.
Yeah.
That would have been even worse.
Yeah, he could have been a Ray. And speaking of Rays, Kevin Cash is in the American League Manager of the Year voting. Do you want to talk about what you're doing with the American League Manager of the Year?
Yeah, I'm giving it to Kevin Cash. I'm not even gonna analyze. I mean, I think that's just the obvious choice. You have Charlie Montoyo and you have Rick Renteria. The fact that he no longer has a job says about everything you need to know. He finished third in his own division. Granted, he did make the playoffs, but he wouldn't have made it if not for the 60-game or for the expanded playoff format. So Rick Renteria is out in my book, just like he's out of his job. And Charlie Montoyo, he just snuck into the playoffs with the Blue Jays, also would not have made it without the expanded playoff. And by all means, I do like what he did this year. I do think he put that team in a much better position for the future. But Kevin Cash, I mean, with all the injuries that he dealt with this year, with Colin Poche, with Chaz Rowe, with Yanni Chirinos, with Andrew Kittredge, with there have been so many this year. And he's been able to press on, and he led his team with the 27th highest payroll in the league to the best record in the National League, in the American League. I'm sorry. Obviously, we don't consider playoffs for this. For everyone wondering about the thing, that thing that will not get considered. So Kevin Cash is the Manager of the Year.
Yeah, I did a little bit of as much analysis as you can do for a Manager of the Year. This
award is so arbitrary. It's not the only value that's actually measured by the writers is just the guy who did better than expected award winner.
Yeah, and that's why like Rick Renteria probably will get first place votes because there is improvement, but it's kind of nonsense. But yeah, to point out Kevin Cash, Rays had the fourth lowest payroll in baseball. He faced a lot of pitching injuries. He also for in-game managing stuff, he used pinch hitters the most times out of any AL team, and he had a 101 weighted runs created plus with them. So he used his
Above average.
as well. Also, second most reliever innings in the American League, and his relievers had a 3.37 ERA. Probably put them in good spots. He was projected, and the Rays were projected to be like second in the division. Ended up with the best record in the AL. So that's kind of how he handled expectations. Rick Renteria, the winning percentage did go from 447 to 583 in 2020, but I'm not really sure about his methods. It seemed like a young team was kind of progressing on its own. Young guys like Anderson, Jimenez, veteran leadership from Abreu, also young guys like Luis Robert, Yohan Moncada, Giolito, Dylan Cease, kind of progressed on their own. I don't know if it was because of the manager necessarily. And then Charlie Montoyo, he was able to overcome some shallow pitching depth, but still, in my mind, they were a 32 and 28 team. It's not a huge deal. So, in conclusion, Kevin Cash was the best manager in baseball in 2020, and he will be getting rewarded for it. Kevin Cash should win American League Manager of the Year, and I believe he will win American League Manager of the Year. Sort of finally, because was he a finalist last year? Because I know he was in 2018.
He was a finalist last year and in 2018.
Yeah, so he's getting his long-awaited due in
Yes.
terms of that award. So now on to the National League. This one is a pretty interesting one in terms of different situations and different ways of improving the team. Pretty interesting one we have here.
So the three candidates are Jace Tingler of the San Diego Padres, David Ross of the Chicago Cubs, and I'm blanking on the other one. Who was the other one?
Don Mattingly.
Don Mattingly of the Marlins. I think, okay, before I announce Jace Tingler, I would like to acknowledge what Don Mattingly did this year. He had to deal with a ton of adversity with his team from the very jump. Obviously, a COVID outbreak within the organization. 4 days into the season, they had to make over 170 transactions throughout the year just to keep, just to be able to field a team, not even to put a good team on a field, just to have guys available that can play baseball. That's what the Miami Marlins had to go through this year. And not only did they do that, but he also got them to the playoffs for the first time since 2003 as a franchise. That is very, very impressive. So, Don Mattingly, I'm going to tip your cap to you as I give the award to Jace Tingler. This is a guy who was in a division that, we all said was a lock at the beginning of the year, and he made it into an interesting division. I mean, there was 2 weeks left in the season, and we couldn't just lock in the Dodgers as the NL West champions. We had to wait a second to make sure that everything was going to be right because of what Jace Tingler did. And might I add, he and the Padres had the second best record in the National League. They would have been the 2 seed if it was seeding like the NBA. So with that being said, Jace Tingler is your National League Manager of the Year.
Yeah, so I kind of went at it with analysis. It's hard to kind of measure what was going on with these teams. Jace Tingler, his team went from a 432 winning percentage in 2019 to a 617 winning percentage. And I think there might have been a possible culture change. And I think he was kind of the young manager of the young team that was necessary in San Diego. And it worked out a lot there. Don Mattingly, his team went from a 352 winning percentage in 2019 to a 517 winning percentage in 2020, kind of similar numbers to Tingler's. And, he did what he could with a young, underdeveloped roster. And yeah, he faced all that adversity. But I think some of that adversity ultimately played into his advantage. And what I mean by that is he did very well in 7-inning games. The Marlins went 10-4 in 7-inning games and 18-23 in 9-inning games. And I know you kind of manage the games that you have, but I think it's sort of easier to manage a 7-inning game, and they did pretty well in those. So I kind of put that as a detriment to him. I don't know if it's exactly the right thing to do. You can't really control that, but he did go 18-23 in 9-inning games. But he did face all that adversity at the beginning of the season. And then David Ross, I mean, his team went from third to first place under his leadership, and he kind of did the job that he had to do. I just don't think that job was as hard as the other guys' jobs. And I'd actually like, you know what, in honor of the election, I'm going to add not a third party candidate, but a fourth party candidate. This guy's not going to win. He's not going to get much of the vote, but I think he should be mentioned because this team was kind of expected to be bottom feeders, and they almost got into the playoffs. I want to talk about Gabe Kapler for a second. He almost led his team to the playoffs despite being projected to be a last place team. And also, I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows if this is a valid stat, but he used the most pinch hitters out of anyone in baseball, and those pinch hitters had a 931 OPS. So I don't know if he had the magic touch. I don't know if those pinch hitters had the magic touch, but it was pretty wild what those pinch hitters were doing for Gabe Kapler. So I think I should have mentioned that. But ultimately, based on the numbers, it's hard to measure each candidate's in-game managing skills. Ross seemed to do his job, but his job of redirecting the Cubs was not as hard as Mattingly's and Tingler's job. And between those two, I think Tingler was the most complete manager, and he was the exact guy they needed, and he did exactly what they needed him to do, and he got the second best record in the National League. So I think Jace Tingler should win National League Manager of the Year, and I believe he will win National League Manager of the Year. I think it's going to be a dead heat, though. I think Mattingly's going to get some votes as well. I think the writers kind of like him as well, so maybe a little biased, but he sort of earned it. But yeah, on to the American League Cy Young.
So am I gonna go?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So
yeah.
I evaluate these three candidates here. We have Shane Bieber, we have Kenta Maeda, and we have Hyunjin Ryu. And I look at what Kenta Maeda did this year. This is a guy who came over to the Twins in this whole fiasco with the Red Sox and the Dodgers. So much confusion was given to him, and he ends up in Minnesota on a team that had a lot of questions within their rotation depth. And what does he do? Goes out, pitches 66 innings with a 2.70 ERA and leading the American League in WHIP with a 7.50. An amazing season that will be good enough for second place in the Cy Young voting. I was hoping I kind of got you there. Yeah, obviously the answer is Shane Bieber. This is not even a discussion to be had. He was the best pitcher in baseball from day one this season. We literally referenced his game one performance on the opening day recap show, and it went from there. A 1.63 ERA, 8-1 record, 122 strikeouts in 71 in a third innings pitched. Are you serious? Yeah, a FIP of 207. I mean, there's not much to be said other than anyone with half a brain could figure out that Shane Bieber is the American League Cy Young this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not, I'll spoil it. Shane Bieber's my pick too, but I figured I should shoot some love out to Hyunjin Ryu and Kenta Maeda. Hyunjin Ryu, he was second in B-WAR among pitchers, among American League pitchers. He was fourth in ERA with a 2.69 and sixth in FIP with a 3.00. And actually, Hyunjin Ryu probably had one of the toughest roads. And this is something I considered because each pitcher had an entirely different schedule because they were only facing 1/3 of the country, basically. Hyunjin Ryu, 10 out of 12 of his starts came against teams with OPS pluses of 100 or better. Those teams were the Rays, Yankees, Braves, Orioles, Mets, and Phillies. Obviously, he faced some of those teams multiple times. But yeah, 10 out of 12 of those starts were above average offenses. That's basically the number of average. And I believe Hyunjin Ryu is a solid Cy Young runner-up. I think he should get second place based on him pitching in the East. Kenta Maeda, he's fifth in ERA. He was fifth in ERA with a 2.70, fifth in FIP with a 3.00, fifth in strikeouts per nine with 10.8. And as Daniel mentioned, he led the league in WHIP with .75. Although 10 out of 12 of his starts came against teams with an OPS plus of less than 100. So he was facing 10 out of 12 of his starts were against below average competition. So I put that a bit against him. And I think,
but he can't control that. Like, he did what he was supposed to do against those teams.
yeah, I mean, he did what he was supposed to do, but Hyunjin Ryu had similar numbers against different competition. So I give Ryu the advantage there. And yeah, Maeda was facing those those teams that he faced 10 times: Indians, Pirates, Brewers, and Tigers. So he had a bit of an advantage with that. Not to his fault. He still had a spectacular season, but in terms of voting, I put that against him a little bit. And then the main event, Shane Bieber led the league in wins with 8, hits per 9 with 5.4, strikeouts with 122, strikeouts per 9 with 14.2, FIP with 207, ERA plus with 281, and ERA with a 1.63 ERA. He did not allow an earned run in 6 of his 12 starts, and all 6 of those starts he went 5+ innings pitched, and 5 out of 6 of those starts without an earned run. He went 6+ innings, so those were quality starts. He never allowed more than 3 earned runs, and each time that he allowed 3 earned runs, it was actually a quality start. He did not go less than 6 innings. Never allowed more than 6 hits. He had 7 games with less than 3 earned runs allowed and 10+ strikeouts. No one else had more than 5 such games this year. And about 5 of his 12 starts came against teams with an OPS plus of 100 or better. So the opponents he was facing was not really largely skewed as maybe it would have been implied with the Central. It was kind of an average schedule. So definitely should not be going against him with that. And Shane Bieber is the clear choice. Shane Bieber should and will win the American League Cy Young. Pretty clear choice with that one. On to the NL.
If that one isn't unanimous, someone is getting fired.
Yeah, absolutely.
NL, this is probably the most interesting race out of any award because all 3 of these guys, I don't think anyone's mad if any particular one of the 3 win it. Like, there is a legitimate case to be made for all 3. Yu Darvish produced the most wins above replacement in the league and also had by far the lowest walk rate to go along with 11 strikeouts per 9 innings. And he had a 2.01 ERA with a 2.23 FIP, very good. Jacob deGrom led the strikeout parade with 13.76 per 9, was just overall consistent in every area, just extremely good. And then there's Trevor Bauer, also there with the strikeouts with 12.33, led ERA with a 1.73, but did have a bit of a higher FIP with a 2.88. I really do think the sample size of this season is going to contribute to the way this award is viewed, because I think if this was done on a greater scale, then I think Bauer doesn't get as much love because of the peripherals. And with that said, my 2020 National League Cy Young Award winner is Trevor Bauer.
Trevor Bauer.
Trevor Bauer is my Cy Young. He led in ERA. He led in, I'm not going to say he led in complete games. That doesn't count. They were both 7 innings. He led in ERA plus with 276. He led in WHIP. He led in hits per 9. And he was right up there in virtually every statistic. He was probably just the most consistent pitcher in the league. And he did it with all that flair. So I am going to put Trevor Bauer. Also, I don't think this is going to be put into much perspective, but the left on base rate for him is very impressive as well. It was 90.9%. That means 9 out of 10 runners that were put on base by Trevor Bauer did not score. That doesn't include home runs, obviously, because they're not put on a base. And that led the National League, and it was not even close. Yu Darvish was second with an 8.38. So I'm going with Trevor Bauer as my National League Cy Young, but I really would not be surprised if he didn't win it, and I wouldn't be mad if he didn't either.
Yeah, this is a like you say, it's a very interesting race. I say it's interesting because of the difference in competition in a way, the same way I view like the Cy Young runner-up. So I'll start with Trevor Bauer. He led the league in hits per 9 with 5.1, whip with 0.80, ERA plus with 276, and ERA with 1.73. So those, traditional statistics, he had them. He was also 6th in innings pitched with 73, 5th in FIP with 288, 3rd in strikeout to walk ratio with 5.9, and 2nd in strikeouts per 9 with 12.3. One, I guess, detriment you can have to him, 10 out of 11 of his starts came against teams with an OPS plus of worse than 100. So that's almost all of his starts came against below average offenses. Darvish, he led the league in wins with 8 and FIP with 223. He was third. He was also 3rd in innings pitched with 76, 4th in whip, 8th in strikeouts per 9, 4th in strikeouts, 2nd in strikeout to walk ratio, and also 2nd in ERA with a 2.01 ERA. He's exactly tied with Trevor Bauer in Baseball Reference WAR, and 9 out of his 12 starts came against below average offenses with an OPS plus worse than 100. And then we have Jacob deGrom, who kind of took the tougher path. He was on the East. He's facing those tougher offenses. So, we have to look at these numbers maybe a little differently. He led the league in strikeouts with 104, and he led the league in strikeouts per 9 with 13.8. He was 4th in ERA with a 2.38 ERA, 2nd in FIP with a 2.26 FIP, and 4th in strikeout to walk ratio with 5.8. 8 out of 12 of his starts came against above average offenses. He was facing the Braves, Red Sox, Phillies, Rays, Blue Jays, and Nationals, some of those teams multiple times. And he trails Trevor Bauer and Darvish in Baseball Reference WAR by 0.1. And Baseball Reference WAR actually considers like the offenses you're facing and the defense that's behind you. That's why sometimes it gets a little confusing because, guys with lower ERAs and more innings sometimes don't have as high of a WAR as another guy. But that's why he's kind of right there with them, even though he's trailing in ERA and innings. So how I look at it is
let me ask you something real quick. Do you think that peripherals should be, I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but do you think peripherals should be more or less considered in a shortened season?
I mean, peripherals are weird also because now we got Baseball Savant. I think Trevor Bauer's expected ERA, which is something I look at more than FIP now because it considers what's actually in play.
Yeah.
His expected ERA was like near the 100th percentile, I think, or something of that nature. It was very good.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot to.
So, yeah, I mean, peripheral, it's weird. I mean, like, if, like, Zach Davies had a 2.73 ERA and a 5.01 FIP, it's hard to, like, it would be hard to, even though the result on the field was great, it would be hard to, like, really consider him that way,
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe it should be considered more because you're more likely to get lucky or unlucky in a 60-game season. So maybe you can luck your way into a 2.73 ERA like Zach Davies. But yeah, how I see the National League Cy Young, I wrote down like conclusions. I really treated this like a school project. I say because Bauer and Darvish had similar schedule and Bauer had better numbers than Darvish, I give that advantage to Trevor Bauer. So then it comes down to Bauer and deGrom. And despite deGrom facing significantly stiffer competition, I still give Bauer the advantage because of the significant difference in ERA. Bauer had a lower ERA by over half a run. And Bauer also had almost an inning higher in innings per start. Bauer had 6.6 innings per start. deGrom only had 5.7 innings per start. So I believe Trevor Bauer should win the National League Cy Young Award because of this. And I believe he actually will win the National League Cy Young Award because, they're looking at ERA and innings mostly. They're not going too in depth. And even with that, I still think Trevor Bauer is the NL Cy Young. So now we're going on to MVPs.
We are going on to the most valuable player. Let's do it.
Yes. So we got Jose. We got two Jose's and a DJ. Jose Ramirez Jose Abreu, DJ. Damn, I really glitched there. DJ LeMahieu.
You lagged.
Yeah.
We'll call it that. We're on a Zoom
Chris
call.
Chris.exe
Okay.
stopped working.
So. So for my analysis here, the first person I looked at when I considered these three candidates was DJ LeMahieu. And I considered him first because of, just the overall versatility of him as an offensive player. He is the premier contact hitter in the league, and he has been virtually his entire career, but especially since he joined the Yankees. And his home road splits are kind of weird because they heavily favor Yankee Stadium, and they, of course, heavily favored Colorado. But who cares? He's doing what he should. He led the majors in batting average. He led the American League in OBP. He led the American League in OPS, and he led the league in OPS plus. Obviously, that should be enough for me to say he is the American League MVP. But the one thing that I do think has to hold him back is the fact that he got hurt and only played 50 games. So if you're curious, 50 out of 60 games is roughly 83% of the season. And if you're curious as to what that would look like on a 162 game scale, that would mean he played about 134 games-ish. And if you want to think about someone who played 134 games, that would be Mike Trout in 2019. And Mike Trout in 2019 won the American League MVP. So that is something to think about. However, I do think in a shortened season that the time missed is going to be more considered because it's just, you could lose this award in a week, but you could win it like just as easily. In fact, probably more easily than you can win it in a week. And I looked at what Jose Ramirez did in the month of September of this year, and it was absolutely remarkable. And he was also just very much there to begin the season as well. He finished the season as the major league leader in wins above replacement and on the Fangraphs, and that was no mistake at all. He had a 993 OPS, 163 OPS plus. His walk rate was a little down, but regardless, a 607 slugging is absolutely absurd. And Jose Abreu, which is very consistent. He was probably the most consistent guy throughout the season as far as quality production throughout the whole season and actually being there. But I just don't think the amount of production was enough. And with that being said, I'm going to go with Jose Ramirez as my American League MVP.
Good. American League MVP, I would say, from my perspective, most fascinating award for me at least, or at least the way I look at it, because value, they really mess with us. If it was the best player,
so arbitrary, yeah.
Yeah, if it was
they
the
literally
best
tell
player
the baseball writers to make up your own definition of valuable. So it's so arbitrary. That's why Kevin Pillar got MVP votes in 2019.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, that's why Kevin Pillar was 22nd in the MVP vote in 2019. But yeah, it's very arbitrary. And if it was the best player award, I think it would be a lot easier. But value, it's very, very subjective. And like all three finalists, I wouldn't be mad at winning, and I wouldn't be mad at one of four guys winning. I think Shane Bieber is also in the mix here.
And even Mike Trout.
Yeah, possibly. Very, very much so. So I'm going to break down case by case. So Jose Ramirez, I think he has the best complete stats. He had 292 with a 993 OPS. He also had 10 stolen bases, which is more than both Abreu and LeMahieu. And he had one out above average in the field in 58 games. He leads in F-WAR, but he's fourth in B-WAR because Baseball Reference doesn't like his defense for some reason. I trust Baseball Savant, and I think it's more favored with F-WAR in terms of that. And his first 47 games, he had an 856 OPS. His last 11 games, he had a 1624 OPS. So I don't know if I skew that in his favor because you like consistency, or they went 9-2 in those last 11 games. That's very valuable, and it helped them get a home game in the playoffs. And also, one thing to add, he hit 345 with runners in scoring position throughout the season. So then I look at Jose Abreu. He hit 317 with a 987 OPS. That's only 6 points off from Ramirez in terms of OPS. And he also had 2 outs above average in 60 games. So if anyone's saying that he was a defensive liability, I think that's plain wrong based on what we're seeing from StatCast. Abreu also was a guy who kind of broke out. His first 21 games, he had a 701 OPS. Then his next 10 games, 1748 OPS. It was ridiculous. The White Sox went 9-1 during that run. It was insane. So it was similar to what Ramirez did, except it was smack right in the middle of the season. And then his last 29 games after that 10-game stretch, he had a 932 OPS. It was very consistent. He led the league in games played with 60. He played all 60. He led the league in hits. He also led the league in RBI with 60, had an RBI per game. And he led the league in slugging with 617 and also led the league in total bases. He finished third in FWAR among American League players, and he led the league in Baseball Reference WAR among American leaguers. Also, in terms of consistency, he was pretty consistent. He reached base safely in 55 out of the 60 games that he played, and those were the most amount of games someone reached base this year. So in terms of consistency, it's even though he kind of struggled at the beginning, he was still getting on base. He didn't reach base only 5 times this year, and he ended up hitting 329 with runners in scoring position throughout the season. Then you have DJ LeMahieu, the last guy I'm going to mention. He led the league in average, 364, on base percentage, 421, and OPS with 1011 in 50 games. He had -1 outs above average, according to Baseball Savant. So kind of average defensively, not a plus or a negative really. He had a 990 OPS in his first 19 games before injury, and then after injury had a 1024 OPS. So that's pretty much a model of consistency. He didn't really have any surges like Ramirez or Abreu. He was just kind of the heartbeat of the lineup the entire season while he was healthy, which was 50 out of 60 games. And yeah, most consistent out of the candidates, and he hit 364 with runners in scoring position. And an honorable mention is Shane Bieber. You know, he had an excellent season. He's a slam dunk candidate for the American League Cy Young. And, you know, I wouldn't put him down, you know, even if he was a finalist, I probably wouldn't put him down because I don't think he had enough innings per start. He had less than 6.5 innings per start. And I think I want an MVP caliber pitcher, especially in a shortened season, to be closer to 7 innings per start. But maybe that's just me. So I think it's fair that he's, you know, a guy that's going to be in 4th place or something like that. But yeah, ultimately, how I see it, DJ LeMahieu is the most consistent and the heartbeat of the Yankees offense, but he did miss 10 games, and he did not have the defense or base running of, you know, his competition, Jose Ramirez. Jose Abreu, very similar to Jose Ramirez in the batter's box. As I mentioned, their OPS was extremely similar. They were within 6 points of each other. And they had a very similar hot 10 to 11 game stretch where their OPS was, you know, a year where America was colonizing. It was in the 1600s, 1700s. It was insane, those 10 to 11 game stretches. But ultimately, I think Ramirez's consistent defense and base running, especially, gives him the slight edge above the rest of the candidates. I think it's a very small difference between him and the rest of the candidates. And I believe Jose Ramirez should and will win American League MVP. Fascinating group of candidates there. I went a little long, but it was a deep dive there.
Oh yeah.
So now on to the National League MVP, which is should be a relatively easy decision.
Yeah, it should be. Out of the 3 candidates, you have Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, and Manny Machado. Manny Machado, you had a great season, but thanks for coming out. I have a question here. If they're going to nominate DJ LeMahieu, even though he played 50 games, why aren't we nominating Juan Soto for National League MVP?
Yeah,
like what he did was, I mean, he only played 47 games, but what he did was like what DJ did on steroids. I mean, he was absolutely absurd this year.
I guess the only
Had
argument,
a 490. That's my argument against DJ is why he's not going to win it is because of the games played, and that's why they didn't nominate Soto. Soto had a 490 OBP, a 695 slugging for an 1185 OPS. He was absolutely ridiculous, and I really wish he didn't have a false positive COVID test at the beginning of the season because that's the only thing that would have stopped him from winning the MVP. All three of those stats that I mentioned, Soto led the league in. The second best person in the league was Freddie Freeman in all of them. So he is my winner. I mean, there's not much else to be said. Freddie Freeman, outside of Soto, led an offensive WAR, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, and on-base plus slugging. Also led the majors in runs scored, led the majors in times on base, led the majors in doubles, and just about everything else he was right up there in. I don't know. There's not really much to be said other than that. Freddie Freeman should and will win the NL MVP, and I'm happy for him because he deserves it.
yeah, I definitely did not analyze as much with the National League MVP as I did with the American League MVP. The Soto thing, the only argument I guess there is, and it's more of an old school thing, Juan Soto was not on a winning team. DJ LeMahieu was, so it's kind of the subjective part of it, even though one man can't carry a team, but that's kind of the old school narrative, and I think that's why he's not a finalist. And DJ LeMahieu is. I'll do a little shout out to the candidates. Mookie Betts, he hit 292 with a 927 OPS with 10 stolen bases and 5 outs above average this season. He also was 6th in offensive WAR and 7th in defensive WAR in the National League. And Mookie Betts was especially good with runners in scoring position. He hit 439 with runners in scoring position. He ended up being 3rd in FWAR among National Leaguers, and he led the league in BWAR among National Leaguers, surprisingly enough. Manny Machado, he hit 304 with a 950 OPS and also had a positive 3 outs above average as a defender. He finished 8th in offensive WAR and also 8th in defensive WAR. Machado was also very good with runners in scoring position. He hit 381 when there was a man on either second or third. And he was 3rd among National Leaguers in BWAR and 6th among National Leaguers in FWAR. And then the main guy, got to show some love to your National League MVP, Freddie Freeman. Like Daniel mentioned, 2nd in every slash line category, 341, 462, 640, 1102. And that was behind Juan Soto. Juan Soto accumulated only 75% of Freeman's plate appearances. So Freeman had about 25% more plate appearances than Soto did. And Freeman was 2nd in BWAR and 1st in FWAR among National Leaguers. He hit 423 with runners in scoring position. It was ridiculous. And what I will point out, his last 37 games, which is basically the final 2/3 of the season, I guess you could say, in his last 37 games, he hit 385 with a 1242 OPS. And in his last 37 games with runners in scoring position, he hit 515 with an 1825 OPS. That's how good Freddie Freeman was, especially in those last 37 games. Freddie Freeman is the clear choice for all these reasons. Freddie Freeman should and will win National League MVP. And there's our awards.
I would like to give some quick shout outs to Juan Soto because he has some ridiculous splits this year. So the first thing I noticed, so the Nationals were 19 and 28 in games that Juan Soto played in. In those losses, he had a 1204 OPS and he had an 1147 OPS in wins. He also had 10 home runs in losses and only 3 in wins. So with that the assumption there is that he's only doing it in garbage time. But with runners in scoring position, he hit 421 with a 1374 OPS. So that's obviously not the case.
Yeah.
And then one real quick, leading off innings, this doesn't really have anything to do with anything, but it's hilarious. So Juan Soto had 34 plate appearances leading off an inning. Only 25 of them registered as actual at-bats because he had 8 walks and only 1 strikeout. And his slash line was 520, 647, 1160, 1807.
Dang.
Leading off an inning.
Dang.
Which is hilarious. That's not even fair. So, I just wanted to show some appreciation to Juan Soto because if it wasn't for the false positive COVID test, he would have been the National League MVP, and he would have been. And I used my preseason prediction too, so
Yeah,
that kind of
that's
screwed
nice.
me from being right. That's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, we weren't too great with our preseason award picks, but I think one win for me, Kevin Cash.
Yeah,
That's the one I have out of 8.
I had
Mike Clevenger's not going to win
I don't think I had
SIL.
any because I had. What did I have? Yeah, no, I had Luis Robert and Gavin Lux as the rookies of the year. Went real edgy. What I had I had Aaron Boone and David Ross. I had Tyler Glasnow and Steven Strasburg. Those flopped big time. And then I had Soto and Trout. Yeah.
Trout's up there.
Yeah.
I had Matt Chapman. That didn't really work.
Yeah.
Yeah, my AL one.
Man, I would have been right if Soto didn't have a false positive test. 100%. But I'm happy for Freddie Freeman. And Soto will have plenty of time to win a National League MVP. He just finished his age 21 season.
Yeah, I was about to say we're gonna be mentioning him in several award shows in the future.
Yeah. The craziest thing about him is at a young age, someone normally is just like a free swinger and not very patient. He has a 415 career OBP through 1110 at bats.
Yeah, I think his rookie year there was over a 100-point difference between average and on-base percentage.
Yeah, I wonder where that on-base percentage ranks all time among players through their age 21 season because it's got to be like top 3.
Well, it's tough. It's tough because I don't know if there's many players who have like as many plate appearances as he does.
Williams. Yeah, I'll put some sort of like filter on it. I'll set some sort of minimum or whatever. Okay, I'm gonna do this right now. So since 1871, we're gonna go. This might take a little bit because Fangraphs has to load. We're gonna go age 14 to age 21. Filter the age.
This is stat finding. This is what we do.
Yeah, this is the big moment where we find out Juan Soto. Does he not qualify? Oh no, he does. Okay, he's top 5. He's 5th. The order goes Ted Williams number 1, Jimmy Fox number 2, Mel Ott number 3, John McGraw number 4, and Juan Soto number 5.
Yeah, that checks out. Outside of John McGraw, it's all guys with 90+ Baseball Reference WAR total in their career,
and obviously Juan Soto too.
Yeah, and then Juan Soto. Yeah, he's pretty insane. Pretty insane what he can do better.
Yeah.
But yeah, that wraps it up. That's our award show for 2020. Our kind of picks and predictions. If you enjoyed the show and you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can check the show out on YouTube, our YouTube channel. It is called STBNL with Chris Gianta and Daniel Curran. If you want to follow us on social media, follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel at Daniel_Curran on both Twitter and Instagram. And follow the show Instagram at STBNL Podcast. It's probably going to be a little more active. We're going to be starting doing history. We're starting this week. This week we got Greg Maddux in the 2016 Cubs. So we got that ramping up. So it's the off season, but specifically this off season, the show is not slowing down at all. In fact, it's probably speeding up, oddly enough. So we hope you enjoyed our award show, and we hope to see you on Wednesday when we're going to be talking about Greg Maddux. See you then.